Good afternoon, and welcome to a special episode, I suppose, of the Talk of the County podcast. Recorded on a Wednesday, I hear you say, yes. And that's purely down to the happenings at Cheltenham Town Football Club today. I am joined by Chris Howes, a Cheltenham Town fan. Good afternoon, Chris.
Hiya, Dan.
It's just me and Chris today. We banned Sean and Dave because they'll be overjoyed, too much overjoyed of what's going on at Cheltenham. No, generally, so they can't make it today. But so it's me and Chris. I will start off with the statement that came out of Cheltenham Town this morning. It was actually broken by John Palmer with a statement saying, "I believe that Cheltenham Town and Gary Johnson have parted ways." Got everybody's taste buds going, was eagerly anticipating what was going to come out of the club. And this is what came out of the club. Cheltenham Town Football Club is disappointed to announce that Gary Johnson has today resigned from his position of Director of Football. The board wishes to thank Gary for his positive contributions both as manager and Director of Football. Gary was instrumental in securing immediate return to League football in 2016 following our relegation to the National League. He also helped to stabilise the club last season following relegation from League One in 2024. During his employment with Cheltenham Town, he helped recruit several players for whom substantial transfer fees were generated. The directors wished Gary well and thanked him for his work during his time at the club. Chris, what do you make of that?
First and foremost, the statement that came out was a true reflection of how the club currently sits. There were spelling mistakes, there was grammatical errors, there was not a lot right with that statement at all. The large consensus of fans, I don't think, are disappointed by Gary Johnson's resignation. When John put out that tweet, I actually posted on X myself saying, just because they've parted ways, it doesn't mean that we've sacked him, because everyone thought the board had finally listened to the fans and sacked him. And I said that I wasn't jumping on that bandwagon until until it had been confirmed that he was sacked, and it turns out that he resigned. Is it the right result? Yes, 100%. In my opinion, the statement, to dive deep into it, I agree with the sentiment that he did a lot in terms of getting us back up, and that shouldn't be forgotten. But to say several players that he's brought in have brought in massive fees, I'd say it's more like 2 or 3. Let's have a look at how many players in total that he brought into the club that didn't generate anything and are actually playing National League South, and even and I'll get a dig in at Gloucester here, at Gloucester's level. That's my opinion on the statement. I think it's overly trying to put Gary in the best light possible, when I don't think there is a lot of positivity, and that was a big word in the statement, was positive. In his second spell with the club, I don't see a lot positive.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the one thing I took from the statement, Chris, was, well, when you break the statement down into little sections, which I've done many of times because it has, gobsmacked me a little bit. It seems like it's a dig at the fans. We are disappointed because the fans have pushed Gary. Gary has resigned. It's not our decision. He has resigned because of the protest was happening for the last couple of weeks. So dig at the fan base.
I completely agree with that.
And then obviously at the bottom of it, they go on to say that he made substantial money, which is great. No Cheltenham fan has ever denied that Gary Johnson hasn't done a good job at Cheltenham. What he done for this club in 2015, when he got us back into the Football League, was, what's the word I'm looking for? It would have been detrimental, we know, had we not gone out that season. And he done it. people I've seen people put on X saying, yeah, but he had parachute payments. We might have had parachute payments to go down, but so have Southend, so have Kidderminster, so
And
have
we still didn't have the biggest budget, even with the parachute payment.
exactly that. He got his recruitment right. It all clicked. He got the right characters. He brought in the likes of Harry Powell, the likes of Jack Munns and Billy Waters, who we've all seen from the interviews, the things that the club used to put out, the interviews, showing what sort of characters these players were. But I just thought the statement today was kind of like, he's left, not our choice, because you've protested. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. It would be something strange if a Cheltenham Town board listened to their fans anyway. In general, that's historical. They don't generally listen to the fans, and they don't communicate with their fans. Um, so yes, I would fully agree with your summary there, in that it looked a bit like a dig at the fans, because of how loud the fan base has been, particularly in the last two games. The fan base have been very loud, um, both inside the stadiums and on social media outside of the grounds, etc. Um, and there are other people within I mean, for example, Paul Godfrey was on the Robin's Nest just yesterday, um, talking about the goings on in the club, and Gary Johnson in particular. So it's clear to me that it wasn't a board decision, and that's why I thought he wouldn't have been sacked. That's why I thought he must have resigned.
Yeah, do you know what, Chris? I was with you when I saw John Palmer's tweet this morning. Um, there was someone telling me that he had resigned. I think I sent a message to somebody, and I said, I'll tell you exactly what I said now. I think I put, there's three reasons he's either gone, and that is one, because of the fan pressure; two, that the board were making the decision and they're maybe going to have a big change; or three, it was because maybe there was a bit of a rift between him and Michael Flynn. Because I think if you go back to the Cardiff interview, um, some of the things Michael Flynn said after that got me thinking, and it was more like, I've spoken to Michael Garlick. I've told him what I want Gary to get me. Um, Now, as a director of football, that him the manager, their relationship should be where they're sitting down in a room, getting a massive A3 piece of paper out on the table, going, right, this is who I want. If I can't get him, I want him. If I can't get him, I want him. But that didn't seem like that was happening, does it?
No, it doesn't. And in recent pre and post match interviews, it has appeared to me that Michael Flynn has been doing his utmost not to bury Gary Johnson. Sorry, it has come across that way, in that Michael wasn't happy with the recruitment, and that he was doing everything he could not to appear like he was throwing Gary under a bus.
Yeah, no, agree. And it is hard for a manager because theoretically, a director of football is your boss. And
Yes.
if you're not feeling you're being, it's the same in any workplace. If you go to work to do your job and you're getting pressure from your manager to get deadlines and what, yeah, i.e. with Michael Flynn, get results. If you're not getting that from the manager, you could maybe turn around to him saying, look, I wanted that striker, I didn't get it. But all the flack, football's a different business to anything. All the flack goes onto social media. And that is what's been happening over the last few weeks. And Michael Flynn's been on the end of it. It was only a couple of weeks ago we was talking about, what happened between him and his family after the Barnet game. So Michael Flynn's getting the flack, and Gary Johnson, our director of football, has not been heard of. I think he's in the last 12 months. We had an interview when he came in. 15 months. He had an interview when he came in. He did an interview with Bristol City outside Ashton Gate, which I've got no problem with, by the way. But and then we hear, what, 10 minutes, about half hour after the transfer deadline day, he's on BBC Gloss Radio with our transfer day talk. I'd sent a message in at the time, just literally about a minute before Gary Johnson went on, and I said, that there's disgruntled fans, and Michael Flynn's getting a lot of the flack, and I think that the blame needs to be laid elsewhere. And I'm sure people here, his reply was, there was no reply. It was just basically said, "Oh,
He didn't answer you.
crikey,
The reply you got was, "I've done a great job in getting Ethan Archer, all the money for Ethan Archer."
Before
Yeah.
that though, Chris, he went, crikey, I feel like a prime minister.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, then he went on to the reflecting. Oh, I've got £400,000 for Ethan Archer. I'll hold my hands up and give him his due. £400,000 for Ethan Archer. That was a Gary Johnson signing, which we'll go on to in a minute, because I want to read something out which maybe counteract what this person said. But yeah, it's like it's not a surprise to me this has all come around. I did think that maybe what I was surprised with, Chris, was the fact he's resigned. We all look at Gary Johnson as probably being stubborn and egotistical, maybe. So for him to resign, as he got to the point where he's gone, what's he, like 70 years of age now, maybe?
Yeah.
And got to, and because like I said, at the last home game, I looked up.
I was going to bring up the last home game, and something that you said about the last home game in that he walked out with 25 minutes left.
Yep.
And there can only be one reason for that, because that was the first time the fans were really loud in chanting, Johnson out, or whatever they were singing. So I think that's had a bearing. He's seen it at the away game as well. And frankly, yes, however old he is, do you really want that at that age? Can you be bothered putting up with it?
He's
For
obviously
me,
not
no.
who needs the money, is he?
He doesn't need the money. He's and it's probably best we don't talk about money when it comes to Gary Johnson. And I'm not going to say anything libelous either. So we'll move on swiftly from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, was his heart in the job? That's the question, because a Gary Johnson whose heart's in the job doesn't give up.
I would probably say that his heart's in the job, because we've all known Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson's the best way I could describe him. He's like a little Rottweiler or a little Jack Russell. He's nippy and he has his corner. It's been well known that Gary Johnson has a corner. He has people he likes. We know he likes Harry Powell. He likes Aaron Downs, and you know what? I like Harry Powell and I like Aaron Downs. I've got nothing bad to say against either of them, even though some of the stuff I've said about Aaron Downs online, I think it's a bit harsh. Do I agree with, if Michael Flynn goes, that the coaching staff go? Yeah, because everybody's part of the poor performances. It's not just on Michael Flynn, but we'll get on to that. But if he doesn't like you and you do not fit into that circle, it's been well known. We've been told, and it's been well known, that Michael Flynn wanted to keep Tom Bradbury. Now, Tom Bradbury wasn't on big wages at Cheltenham Town. You can guarantee he wasn't an eye earner. Michael Flynn wanted to keep him, but was moved on. Was given an offer that it was easy to refuse. Same with Ryan Haynes. Michael Flynn wanted to keep Ryan Haynes. Was given an offer which is easy to refuse. He went part-time to play for Brackley. I know I said before, that he's got he's got a career in photography. He wants to stay, so part-time football might suit him, Chris. But if you're having that taken away from you when you're going, I want to keep that squad because he's going to, the continuity I want to keep in this squad would involve a left-sided defender, Tom Bradbury, a left back in Ryan Haynes. That's been taken away from him. It can't help you, can it?
No, and to go back to your actual original question, yes, I do think that there was a rift between Gary and Michael. Does it affect On the pitch performance, probably not. Only that Michael hasn't got the players that he probably wanted. But as I said in our last pod at the weekend, on paper, our team is a lot better than bottom of the league, of League Two on paper. And it is the manager's job to get those players to play and win games. But if he hasn't got the players that he wants, that makes his job more difficult.
Yeah, it does. And this is where I've always kind of, I just, like we said on our last pod, I've always kind of like backed Flynn and stuck up for him because I thought he had both of his arms and his legs tied behind his back. But obviously Saturday that changed. Where would you see, where do you see the club going now? Now Gary Johnson's gone. Do you think this change? Do you think this is a potential where the club would take the opportunity now, go right, we'll maybe part ways of our manager on Saturday? If results do, it makes it easier because you can go right. We can go out to market, bring somebody in who hasn't got to worry about working under a director of football.
Yeah, look, I said in the last pod that I didn't think that there would be any changes to the hierarchy, not including the manager, until the end of the season, as a decision from the board. This has now been thrust upon the board, and it's clear that it wasn't a board decision. So that has brought forward my thinking that this is now an opportunity to make a real difference in the staffing situation at the club. I've been quite vocal in saying that I don't believe that Aaron Downs is the right man for the job. I've got no problem with Aaron Downs whatsoever, but I don't think he is the right coach for the job. And I want to make it very clear that I have got no problem with Aaron Downs whatsoever.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't think he's the right person for that role. And as I said previously, Darryl Clark is a very similar manager to Michael Flynn in terms of he's a man manager and he needs a coach with him. And as I mentioned before, Darryl Clark had Adam Murray to start with, and then Adam Murray moved on, and then the football took a bit of a nosedive, and hasn't really got better since. So I think we need a proper coach opposed to what Aaron Downs. I don't really know what Aaron Downs is. I don't know his style. I don't know his coaching methods or anything like that. But it would appear from the outside that he's not the right man for the job. And you made a great point last pod, by the way, in that I don't really care. Unlike you, I don't care what the football looks like as long as we pick up 3 points. Would I prefer us to play Adam Murray ball, shall we say, for example? Yes, that would be great. I'd love to be entertained. But what takes preference to me is us picking up 3 points and staying in League Two and building next season.
Yeah, that's a good point because without going over what we've already spoken about on a previous pod is, results come first. If you can get the results and then the style of play comes after, you start picking up and you can start passing around a bit. I looked at Crawley Saturday, and one thing Crawley did, that they kept the possession and they was biding their time. They was playing across the back and
Their movement was great. Their movement was excellent.
It was, and so to be fair, again, sound like a fickle football fan because some of the Crawley fans were getting on their backs at some point because they was playing too much across the back, but they had an identity. You could tell the way that they wanted, Scott Lindsay wanted them to play. Now, that comes down to me, again, that comes down to the director of football. Now, I'm going to read some out here, Chris, which Paul Baker, it's been one out of Paul Baker, obviously our former chairman, has been in dialogue with fans, I would say, on social media. Now, I'm not gonna mention the names to the person he's replying to, but this is what Paul Baker said. Sadly, Gary has been scapegoated by a small section of the fans who blame Gary for the appalling start to the season. I say scapegoated because the manager has had the final say on every signing. It's his team, his squad. Gary did not support many of those signings. Gary has effectively been sidelined at the training ground. I am saddened that the club have not been more supportive and indeed has said very little. We are where we are. I wish Gary all the best and thank him for the significant contributions over many years. And what do you make of that, Chris?
First point I'd like to pick up on there is that Mr. Baker has said that it was a small section of fans. From what I saw and heard, it was certainly not a small section of fans. It was the majority of fans, every side of the ground, apart from the away end, obviously, um, were were part of it. So it wasn't a small section of fans at all. Mr. Baker has put out, well, replied to comments previously, echoing the same kind of sentiment. To be fair, he's clearly a Gary Johnson person. Um, what that's doing to Paul Baker and his reputation within the club is only damaging. I think Paul Baker is one of the best chairmen we've had. One of the um, and by him repeatedly going against what the fans' opinion is only going to tarnish his reputation. There are some fans out there that don't like Paul Baker in the slightest, and that's their prerogative. I so happen to think that he is one of the best chairmen that the club has had, but he is doing absolutely nothing to uh, to 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 endear himself any further to those fans that perhaps don't like him.
But he's got a form, Paul, hasn't he? I can remember when he was chairman, and obviously we got Block One now, the 1887 Red Army, and I don't know if you remember, Chris. A few years ago, we had the Wymans. I was part of that when I was a bit younger, and all we seemed to get on a weekly basis from Paul Baker was the language. Like we was at school. I get you don't want the C word being chucked around and stuff like that, and we do like to pride ourselves on being a family club. But your football fans, they're singing banter with each other. The away end sings to you, you're singing to them. Sometimes there's swear words, and it was always having a bit of a pop at the fans there, and it seems like that's what's happening here. Like fans are going on there. A lot of fans are going on this forum saying we're not happy with what's going on at the club. The communications poor and what have you. And Paul Baker saying a minority. I, I tend to stick up, Chris. I tend to stick up for the club when it's a minority, but when it starts to become a majority, that's when I step back and go, I can't defend it no more because everybody's seeing it. You will always get your, handful, if not, say 20 odd negative people who would be negative. Like I always say, you put £1 million on the table for them, they would moan you didn't give them a bag to take it home in. Those sort of people.
Yeah, you've got negative Nancy's all over the place on Twitter. I see them all the time. There is absolutely nothing that can please them when it comes to Cheltenham Town. Which begs the question to me: go and support someone else then. But they continue to be negative regardless about anything. So you are never going to please every single fan. That's a
No.
fact. But to come out and say a minority when I don't know if Paul Baker was at the ground that day. I think he was, if memory serves me right. It 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 beggars belief how he thinks that that's a minority of fans.
Exactly, and that's what I think. That's my point. Is when it becomes a majority, that's when you step back and go, do you know what? I'm not going to get involved in this because it is a lot of people who see it, not just that negative view. Just going back to his comment, a couple of things I picked out. He says, I say scapegoated because the manager had his final say on every signing, which, to be fair, should be the case.
Yep.
in his squad. Gary did not support many of these signings. Gary has effectively been sidelined at the training ground. Now, before I get your view on that, Chris, I'm going to read some out that I read out on the Robins report a few weeks ago. The job of a director of football. Just in case there is people out there going, actually, what is a director of football's job? A director of football's job description involves leading a club's football operations, including long-term strategy, player recruitment, transfers, youth development, academy alignment, while managing budgets, liaising with owners, and supporting the coach. The role acts as a bridge between the club's business and technical sides, ensuring a consistent footballing vision and philosophy across all levels and organisation. Now, doesn't that counteract what Paul Baker's saying? Paul Baker's saying it's not his signings, it's not that. So does that tell you that Paul Baker's actually saying Gary Johnson's not doing his job?
I think what it's a difficult one, because whilst the role description that you have read out there is factual and it is correct. His job is, when it comes to contracts, I think what that means is that it's his job to tell the players how much they're getting paid.
Yeah, no, exactly, because he's in charge of the budget.
Yes. So are the players Gary Johnson signings? What I can tell, I can give you two names right now that are not Gary Johnson signings. One is Isaac Hutchinson and the other is Joe Day. They are not Gary Johnson signings, and that's one from this season and one from last season.
Scott Bennett as well.
Yeah, that's a last season signing as well. So you can definitely include that in there. However, is Michael Flynn really wanting to sign Tommy Taylor? Is Michael Flynn really wanting to sign Tommy Backwell, who I really like, by the way? I don't think so. That's my personal opinion. I think the majority of the experienced players that have been brought into the club are Michael Flynn signings. And I would hazard a guess at 95% of A, the loans, and B, the younger players, your Ethan Archers, your AJBs, for example, are Gary Johnson signings. That's my personal opinion.
Let me go through this squad of Cheltenham. We got 31 players, okay? Which is way too many anyway.
Do you want me to name who I think signed them?
If I go through them, you say Gary Johnson or Michael Flynn. Joe Day.
Flynn.
Diallo, we know, is an academy.
He was a youth player.
Tane Anderson.
Johnson.
George Harmon.
Johnson.
Arcadieu Boyd.
Johnson.
Derek Power.
Probably Johnson.
Scott Bennett.
Flynn.
Mazionis.
I would say Johnson.
Sam Sheeran.
Probably Flynn.
Ibra Bakare.
Johnson.
Obviously, Mark Barbers and Cam Waters are academy prospects. Rob Cundy.
Flynn. James
Wilson.
Flynn.
Luke Young.
Probably I'd go with Johnson.
Liam Kinsella was obviously already
here. He was already here, yeah.
He's worked under Flynn before. Harry Tustin, Freddie Wilcox Academy. Now, Harry Powell, I'm going to just put this in there. I know Michael Flynn wanted Harry Powell when he was at Swindon.
Yeah.
But
I think that was that was one of the very few that you can put under both.
I generally still think it's Gary Johnson, because I don't know if you can remember the interview we did on the Robins report with Harry Powell, and Harry Powell said he bumped into Gary Johnson that summer, and obviously asked him what he was doing. So I'm still going to go. I'm going to go 80-20 Gary Johnson.
Fair enough.
So Tommy Backwell.
Johnson.
Harrison Sona.
Johnson.
Jordan Thomas is obviously already here. Ryan Broom.
Johnson.
Isaac Hutchinson.
Flynn.
Ethan Archer.
Johnson.
Josh Martin.
Johnson.
George Miller.
Johnson. You can put all of the strikers under Johnson.
Bickerstaff, Tom King, Tom Taylor.
But with the exception of Tom King, because he was obviously already at the club.
Yeah. Software area was obviously one of ours, and
Yeah.
Leanne Gull.
Yeah.
So
All Johnson.
counting through that 31-man squad, and like I said, I'm being a bit unfair because some of them are academy players. Only 5 we've picked out a week on. That's like Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
um, which tells you what Paul Baker's saying is probably not true.
I'm inclined to agree with you.
Yeah. So, um, so where do you see the club going now then, Chris? Where, what
It's
direct?
interesting, Dan. It's really interesting because looking at looking at Mike Garlick and his history with Burnley, he'd never had a director of football. He also never had a CEO, by the way, which I know a lot of the fans have been asking for. But what he did have was a technical director who basically did the same job of a director of football. So it kind of intertwined the chief scout slash director of football slash CEO role. And he had Mike Rigg, who is currently at Birmingham City Academy. So Mike Rigg, after leaving Burnley in 2021, went to Abu Dhabi, Al Jazeera Sports, and spent nearly 2 years there before becoming technical director of Birmingham City's academy. Would Mike Garlick bring in someone like that? I think that is the most likely. However, would Mike Rigg in particular, and I think Mike Rigg is probably the best candidate, but would he leave Birmingham City Academy? Sorry, probably I would suggest not. Although there is one thing going in our favour for that kind of appointment, in that the gulf now between Bristol City Academy and Bristol City first team has got quite big in the last year. So does he think he can have more of an impact at a Cheltenham Town opposed to a Birmingham City Academy, who have got a massive gap to the first team now? I mean, Birmingham City this season have had one academy player in play any football for them all season. So that's the direction I think, if Mike Garlick is making the decision, would go, opposed to a director of football type role. Like I say, it is pretty much the same thing, just worded differently. But like I say, it depends on who is going to be making that decision. I'm sure Mike Garlick will have an input, but Mike Garlick, like I say, he's never had a director of football or a CEO, and he likes to have other board members around him. Our current chairman is David Bloxham, so I would assume it would fall on David Bloxham to fill that role, being chairman of the football club. However, he isn't a controlling interest in the football club. Mike Garlick is. So who makes that decision? If Cheltenham Town could communicate that to the fans, maybe we would have a bit more clarity.
I think the current board now, I know I've got to be careful what I say here because I know some of them do get a working as volunteers. I do think that now the current board are working for Mike Garlick. They will have their board meetings, they will have their ideas, but I think the sole sign off pretty much comes from, we've got the Robbins Trust who own 14%.
I'm keeping my mouth quiet on the Robbins Trust.
the sole sign off will come from Mike Garlick. Mike Garlick is the majority owner, owner of the club. 75% of the club, which means that if he wanted to, he could form his own board, because he's the majority. I don't think he wants to do that. I think
I think he wants clubmen in there. I think he wants people that know the club.
Exactly. And what I will say to people, and this is not me sitting here because I don't feel it's right, going on a witch hunt to get people out of a job. You might have your opinion that person's not good enough in the job, or it may have may have run past his sell-by date, if you like. Um, so I'm going to be careful about sitting here and saying, like, let's go on a witch hunt to get people out. What people's got to remember, Mike Garlick is a businessman, a very rich businessman who has done well in the businesses he runs, the football clubs he's been at, because he's shrewd. And what he would do, he would come into Cheltenham. Yes, the silence is deafening. Um, I agree with that, and that is something that I believe Mike Garlick should be pushing with the board, saying we need to get more communications. But he
Mike
will.
Garlick's more than welcome to come onto this podcast as well, by the way.
Absolutely, I'd love to get him on. But what I will say is he'll be sat in the background. He'll be asking questions. He'll be talking to people. He'll be doing a full audit from top to bottom. And I'm just going to use this as an example. This is not what I think is going to happen or could happen. But David Bloxham could be there as our chairman. And at the end of the season, Mike Garlick might turn around to David Bloxham and go, David, thank you for your contribution to the club, but we're going to go in a different direction in the summer. He was never going to come in on day one and go, hippie-ki-yay, the
Yeah,
rest, and
completely
say,
agree with you there.
there's a door. He needed people to come into Cheltenham Town. He needed to come into Cheltenham Town. He needs people who's been running the club, because let's not get away from it. We have always had a small budget, but on the other hand, we've never really been in trouble, apart from that once under Paul Baker's stewardship.
Yeah, there was that once. Yeah.
We've always, cut our cloth accordingly. We've always spent within budget and what have you. So that the board have done a good job with what they've got. But I think now the club need that next direction. What's disappointing is you go and listen to Paul Godfrey's comments on the Nest, and I've got a lot of respect for Paul, because I think he is Mr. Cheltenham.
Yeah.
But going on there saying we've got plenty of people within the club who are doing the roles, so we don't need a CEO. But we've got 11 players on the football pitch who are not doing their job. So that tells you that if 11 players from Birmingham City become available and Cheltenham can afford their wages, we wouldn't bring them in to replace the 11 players we got, because as a business, you're always striving to push on. You always strive to bring better people in. That doesn't mean that you've got to crap on somebody from a big height and treat them with disrespect. But it's the same as anything. To move your business on, you've got to stay one step ahead, and especially in football, whether that's a CEO, whether that's a commercial director, whether that's your chairman, whether that's the kit man or whatever, you have always got to stay one step ahead. And I think Mike Garlick will be taking all this in the background, and I still believe that come the summer, hopefully as a football league club, that we will see major changes within the club.
Yeah, I've said it a couple of pods ago that I don't think he would do anything until the summer. Obviously, this has been kind of brought to the forefront now because of the resignation. Um, but I still don't believe anything will happen in the boardroom, at boardroom level, until that next summer at the earliest.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to leave it, Chris. I think it was good for us to get this pod, have a bit of a chat about the goings on at the club. Hopefully it's going to be positive going forward. That's a big hope.
What I will say is, now we need everyone back in the lads.
Exactly that.
We need everyone behind the boys, giving their all for 90 minutes, 95 minutes, on Saturday. Help us get over the line and get those 3 points, however bad the football is.
No, absolutely agree. We've got what we wanted within reason. Now that noise we've made over the last 2 games, let's channel that into the players against Oldham on Saturday, because that's the big game. So thanks for joining me, Chris.
Absolute pleasure.
I'm your host, Daniel Hopkins. On the day that the director's gone, what direction will the Robins go? We'll see you on Sunday.